Hey guys, welcome back. I know there's so many of you have been asking about this car, so we are doing this for you today. This is my 1957 Beck 356 Speedster. It is a Porsche Replica, and today I want to talk about lots of things. One being how these are more affordable than you think, and why I actually think it's a better pick over the original if you're looking to buy one. So stay tuned, we're going to talk about all that coming up. So about 10 years ago, my wife said she absolutely loves these cars. So I actually bought this for her. I think I'm going on 5 years of owning this car now. When we bought it, it was a one-owner car. Someone actually had it spec'd from the factory, and they basically optioned out the car completely. It was stored in a climate-controlled environment for about two years until we got our hands on it, and only had about 300 miles on it. So we basically bought a brand new car. The Beck Speedster, this is an all fiberglass body, and it has an advanced tubular suspension. So the original Porsches, if you've ever driven one, they're kind of like, they move on you. I mean, it has a really cool feel. This is definitely a much more polished version of the classic Porsche, and kind of an underrated car in my mind, in my collection, because I'm used to driving, you know, full-on race car GT40, the Ford GT, and I don't really choose to drive this car often, especially because of my wife's, but when I get behind the wheel, I absolutely love it. And we're gonna do some driving footage today, so we'll get into that later. It does have very large disc brakes. We cannot see them because they're stuffed behind these replica wheels. This is ultimately, I think, the coolest look on these Porsches. I've actually seen some of these go with like a Pro Touring variant, which are really cool. You see them floating around Instagram and stuff. They're really neat, but I just think this is like the perfect spec on a classic Porsche. Or, did I say Porsche? You know what I meant. Anytime I get in the car and I sit down, I feel like I become like James Dean or something, right? Like it just has that feel to it. So very cool car. This car was spec'd with kind of like an ivory color. I actually don't know the exact paint code. We can maybe look it up and put it in the description. But with this kind of brown interior going on with the wood wheel, it just screams class, and I absolutely love it. The car is powered. Should we talk about power next? We're just gonna kind of flow right into this thing. So if we come around here, the car's actually powered by a 2.5 liter Subaru motor. So now you have modern performance, putting down about 180 horsepower in a 1,400 pound car. So it gives you smiles when you drive. It's basically a big kid's go-kart. I mean, that's just what it feels like. But again, it feels very planted. I don't have to worry about it breaking down. I think that's one of the best things I like about this. Whereas, you know, the classic Porsches now, what are they going for? Like 400,000 plus? And then you're dealing with a 90 horsepower car, so it's slow as heck. You're just not sure if you're gonna make it to the next stop, right? One of my first cars I ever owned was a 1972 Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. I absolutely love that car. Very similar to the old Porsches, right? I mean, they're basically the same with different body designs. I used to break down all the time in that damn thing. So this has been a real blessing. I think the only issue I've had with it, and probably because it sat for so long, was the clutch pedal is actually via cable. And one time I had the cable snap on me while I was driving it, and couldn't go anywhere. So other than that, the car's been absolutely perfect. It does have dual exhaust that dumps out the rear. You can kind of see it if you come down here. Oh, I'm sorry, I totally misspoke. It has a single exhaust. I was watching a video earlier on another Speedster, and it had dual exhaust out the back, and getting a little confused, but no, it does have a single exhaust. But I'm gonna fire it up real quick because I want you to hear how perfect I think Beck nailed that original sound on this car. So you've got this modern motor, but you still have this like old school Volkswagen Beetle Porsche sound, right? If you've ever been around the classic Volkswagens and Porsches, I mean, how close does, you know, how much closer could you get? Now we're gonna turn this off before we get poisoned. One of the features now, back in the day, they did make the Speedster with a different taillight variant. I personally love the 4 brake lights. I just think it has such an iconic look to it. It's very different, very cool. When you spec a Beck from their factory, you can choose different options and finishes. And like I said, this one was kind of decked out. It was kind of like the creme de la creme of choices from the previous owner. Some of the features that he added were these grills on these headlights, which again, a very like iconic classic feature on these old cars. And then also the fog lights. It gives it a very like, almost feminine appearance with a touch of masculine on the front end. And I just dig it so much. I'm gonna pop that front hood. We're gonna show you, you're like, where's the gas tank on this thing? Well, we're about to show you. And now one thing I like about Beck Speedsters is they don't skip a beat on the quality and finish on their cars. I mean, look at this hood compartment up here. It is absolutely beautiful. You're thinking, okay, God, the car is so gorgeous. What am I gonna pop open that's just gonna be like, oh, there it is, I don't like it. No, I mean, I open this and I actually get excited to fill the car up. I love the rivets in the gas tank. I just feel like it has that like old classic aircraft style, right? I know we've talked about stuff like that before on my channel. And then the carpet just ties it in really well with the outside color. So very beautiful. You'll notice too that if you are far, far away from the car, if you look at the badge on the front, it actually almost resembles a Porsche badge, right? So I'm not looking to trick anyone with the car, I'll tell you, it's a replica, right? But just really neat how Beck was able to actually have that pass the test, right? But it still kind of speaks to that old classic feel. Now, if you come around here on the side, you have the Speedster badge, which is really cool. Again, the colors just kind of really tie into each other. And one thing on this car that was optioned that is not, you know, an ode to the original is the right-hand rearview mirror. I think all of the original cars, if I'm not mistaken, only had one on the left side. So same with a lot of the old Volkswagens. Like my Carmen Ghia did not have one over here. Just kind of fun. The doors, I don't know why, but on this car, I just love the sound the door handle and the door makes when you open and close it. You ready? It just has a very pure sound. Now, let's talk about the interior for a sec. These bucket seats are actually super comfortable. Obviously, you're not one of those cars where you're, you know, 600 plus horsepower, but these definitely do the job. I'm 5'11" and 210 pounds, and I'm super comfortable in this seat. I mean, it just hugs me just right. Now, inside the car, when you're sitting in it and driving in it, the perspective from where you're sitting is absolutely gorgeous. Like, there is not a bad angle on this car. Sitting here staring at this beautiful replica wheel, I think this is made by a company called Nardi. Very analog gauges, nothing digital. I mean, you do have this stereo system, but this is like 90s style. There's no like screen, which I love. And I've mentioned that in previous videos. I'm not a big screen guy. Just has a really neat feel when you're driving it. And then you get to enjoy the experience of driving the car and you're not distracted by flashing lights and stuff. Now, believe it or not, even though it's convertible, this car has air conditioning. It has air conditioning and heat. So that is definitely something that the original cars did not have. But we do have a soft top and we do have side windows. So I'm gonna show you those before we take this thing for a drive. The top, it actually has all these buttons. Do we really have to take it off? It's such a pain in the butt. I'm just messing with you. You could see it here. So nothing electronic about it. You need 2 people, or you need to kind of step into the car to do it. But all these hinges come up and this thing comes over. We'll put a picture up so you can see it. Now it does have Velcro here. So the Velcro actually just attaches to the carpet. Here is the bag that the windows come in. So they actually outfitted similar material, right, to the rest of the car, and then you see it's got 2 pegs. So if you're wondering on the doors what these 2 round holes were, if I can get it to fit, there we go. There we go. So when you put the top up, there's actually a piece of the top that comes over here so you don't have water leak in the car. Now, I've actually driven this car in the rain, and while I don't recommend it with the tires, especially heavy rain, because these are really small tires, it actually held up really well, and we didn't get wet. So it was kind of one of those like surprise rainstorms. We were driving on the freeway and we weren't very close to home, so definitely came in clutch. And generally what I'll do, if I'm driving somewhere too far, we'll put them in the bag and we'll just stick them right behind the seats. So works well. Now, speaking of behind the seats, you will notice there are these 2 little platforms here. Definitely not seats, but when you're on your own private road outside your garage and your 4- and 6-year-old want to jump in, it's a great place for them just to ride up and down a few times. Let's look at the tires. I do not have the tire sizes memorized. We are a 165/80 R15 in the rear, so these are 15-inch rims. I didn't mention that before. And same up front, 165/80 R15. So it is consistent all around. There's a bigger one. Of course, I'm looking at the smallest numbers, and here we go. As my eyes get older, I'll only be able to see those. But I'm still lucky enough to read small print. So you may have seen a video or two ago, Sean from Autotopia LA was here in my garage. We did a couple episodes for their channel on some of my other cars, but he loves Porsche Speedsters. It's his jam. So when he saw this, it was a piece of his heart, like on the car, right when he walked in the garage. So of course, we had to go drive it just for fun. We did not do an official episode, but we got some footage, and Miller put together an awesome video on that. So if you haven't seen that yet, go back and watch it. But he gave his impressions on the car versus the original that he gets to drive when he's back on the West Coast. But today, I'd like to give you my honest review of what it's like from an ownership perspective, especially from a guy that normally drives old American muscle and race cars, basically. So stay tuned for that. I know I talk a lot of smack about, you know, this kind of being at the back of my mind when it comes to picking the car to drive that day, but I gotta tell you something. Just sitting here driving it, even this slow, this car puts a smile on my face. Like this is really fun to drive, and I do, as I drive to the main road, I get real excited when I'm in this thing. It almost takes you back to like going to K1 Speed or something, you know, one of the go-kart places, because that's legitimately what it is. It's just a big kid's go-kart, and it's so much fun. The other thing about this car that's quite enjoyable is if you have your wife or some other passenger in the right seat, it's very quiet, so you can actually have a conversation. We've done a lot of date nights in this car, and it's just a pure joy. So this is a 4-speed transmission. It is a little bit more difficult just to get it into gear versus other cars. I'm not saying it's bad. It's great. It definitely makes you feel very engaged when you're driving it. And the car also has a lot of power. Like if we downshift, right, here we go. Like it's pushing me back in my seat. I mean, it's definitely got the juice. Unlike the original cars, the original like 80 or 90 horsepower cars that you're just like, all right, let's go, you know? This is just really nice. And what a beautiful day too. Right now, today's 4th of July, I think we mentioned, but it is just gorgeous outside. And the nice thing about these Beck Speedsters also is because they're more modern, and this one does have the air conditioning, you really could drive this almost year round, especially if you're in more of like a temperate climate environment, and you don't get a lot of snow. Because the second you put that top up and the windows on, it really does well at keeping the cooler, warm area. The steering on this car feels great. If you're going in a straight line, you can see there's just a tiny, tiny little bit of play. I mean, maybe that's just a matter of an adjustment, but when you point this in the direction, it definitely goes, and you can feel the road inputs, and there's just something really special about the connectivity to the road in this car. Also, we just got a nod from somebody. This car gets an insane amount of attention and public reaction. It's crazy. Now, I did mention that when we bought this car, it had about 300 miles on it, and that was it. We've owned it about, I believe, about 5 years now. I just clicked over 812 miles, so I've definitely got a good amount of driving in it, and most of that driving has been me because my wife still doesn't fully know how to drive stick, and I have to say, to learn to drive stick in this car, it's a little more difficult than others. You really have to, I mean, you got to give it a little bit of muscle to get it into gear, and then also the clutch pedal is a little more difficult to figure out, but I would say definitely the most difficult stick car out of my entire collection to drive, but once you get it, again, pure joy. Drop it in a second, there we go. Man, it's got some pickup. I mean, again, it weighs 1,400 pounds and it's got almost 200 horsepower. It is just a joy, man. Bring a smile to your face, that's for sure. And it sounds so good. The car sound, I love it because part of the experience of this car is not only the fact that it feels somewhat similar to the old era Porsche, right? Porsche Speedster, but it sounds like it too. That was fun. All right, guys, so we just got back from driving this thing and I'm smile ear to ear. I mean, it is seriously just a joy to drive, and I'm gonna try to have a little bit of a mind shift so that I choose this car once in a while over some of the other ones, because it really is that much fun. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is price, because I'm sure you're very interested. Well, what do these things cost? They look like they're like $1 million bucks, right? And I know the original Porsches, I mean, again, probably go anywhere from 200 to 400,000 plus right now. They're ridiculous. They're very high demand. You go online and you type in Beck Speedster. I did a search this morning. I was finding these anywhere from 30 to like 60 grand. That's kind of seen with a midway point in the 40s. So if you're looking for a second car and you're shopping, let's say like a Porsche Cayman or something, this is actually a totally feasible option as like a fun car. I mean, how much cooler does it get from like an aesthetic standpoint and the modern drivability of this car, especially over the original? And I know when we were in the car, I talked a lot about this car and why I really enjoy driving it. Just to kind of sum it up, the reasons I would pick one of these over an original is number one, the price point. I mean, you can't beat the price point. Number two, it drives so nice. It gives you a little bit of that classic feel, but with all the modern amenities and a little bit more of a polished drive, right? So that's number two. Number three, the power. The power band on this car is perfect. 1,400 pounds, almost 200 horsepower. You saw from some of the pulls, I was getting pulled back in my seat just enough. Now, obviously it's not gonna contend with some of my old American Muscle, but it's, I gotta say, it's perfect. We appreciate you being here, and I think the next video we're doing is, I gotta plug this. I think the next video we're doing is 05 Ford GT or 65 Superformance GT40. So stay tuned for that. Loved having you. See you next time.